Hello, hi, everybody. It's John McCaffrey back with the most famous person I barely met, the podcast that is taking um, the world by storm. By the world, I'm meaning a very small place. No, but we're doing well. Welcome to episode 8 with Jill Amber Chafin, wonderful author, writer, mother. She's good at math and she's good at English. She's been around the world, very interesting person. I just had a great talk with her a little bit before this talk. I'm very interested for you to meet her. And we're going to get into some things and the most famous person she barely met. If you like, please like this, subscribe, and never miss a show. So I will say thank you, Jill. Welcome and good to see you.
Yes,
And
thanks for having me here.
you're very, very welcome. You're very welcome. And thank you. And I will start the questions of who are you? Who are you? Where are you? Where are you right now? Where are you coming from?
Yes, I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, um,
Okay.
in my house, my cozy little writing desk.
Nice. What's the temperature down in North Carolina right now?
Well, it was a little chilly this morning. It's 58 degrees.
Okay.
We've been having some hot days, and then all of a sudden back to kind of long sleeve shirts.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but not jacket weather. I was out in shorts, hopeful that it would turn nice, but not too hot because it
Okay.
can get sweltering here.
Yeah, I know a little bit North Carolina. I was telling you before, I used to visit a lot down in Mocksville, North Carolina, and all these great places near Asheville. And I would eat barbecue pork sandwiches and drink sweet tea, and it would take me 3 weeks to come down from the high. I would be shaking. I love it. So do you like that stuff? Do you like that down there, or you're a healthier person?
Well, we do like having some barbecue and things like that. We love it when we go to the mountains where we're at in Chapel Hill. There aren't that
Oh,
many mountains and stuff. I used to live in Asheville, and I like the hiking and the trails and rivers and things like that, and barbecue places there. There's a few barbecue places here, but something about Asheville feels definitely.
yeah, it's an organic place. It's more
Yeah.
like it's all the arts and crafts right up there and all that.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, beautiful. The one thing that struck me, because I'm a shallow person, the one thing that struck me is when you went to these BBQ places, they served it in, they didn't give you a plate. It was just on the thing, right? And I like that. I don't want a plate. I don't want a plate. So I like that. I
It's
liked
good with
everything
it's
about
good
it.
with it's good with kids, you know. It's like you don't
Yeah,
have to worry about them dropping a plate and breaking it.
yeah, I think that should be the motto for North Carolina. No plates. You know what I mean? Anyway, Chapel Hill, that's UNC, right? North
Yes.
Carolina. Great basketball. I went to Villanova, and I just have to put a shout out that we beat them in the national championship game. So just, do you get around the school a little bit around there, or is that?
No, I mean I actually did. I actually went there to finish my bachelor degree
Oh,
about 10 no, it was like 10 or 12 years ago. I went back. Actually did it in psychology, and people find it interesting that I chose psychology when I wanted to be a writer. But I don't know, I didn't want to study writing to no end of like dissecting stories because I did that enough in my writers
yeah,
group, so with my
yeah.
own work. And I wanted to do sort of more psychological thrillers and crime thrillers and stuff focusing on mental health. And so I just was really fascinated by mental health and just thought that studying psychology would be a better fit for me. And I had a really great time. So yeah, so I was on campus a lot back in the day.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I haven't done much there since. But
Uh-huh.
it's a great little school.
Oh, it's beautiful. I actually, I think I see a great advantage of studying psychology to be writing. And I worked for years for a mental health treatment facility, and it only helped my writing, especially when they let me out. That's a joke. That's a bad joke. But it helped my writing. In fact, I was in analysis for a long time, and my therapist didn't want to hear about my writing after a while, so that was good. So give us your arc. because you were telling me you as a child you travel around all over the place and all that, and start from a little bit of there where you grew up and get to where you are now with your family, and then we'll do a little writing and get into the thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I was born in Wisconsin. My parents were actually from Chicago. My dad grew up in inner city, downtown Chicago, a real city boy, and my mom was in the suburbs and always dreamed of reliving basically Little House on the Prairie. So when I was, we were in southern Wisconsin, and when I was 4, almost 5, they bought 20 acres of land up in central Wisconsin in the middle of nowhere. And we moved up there with no money and no job, and with
Brave.
this determination to build a log cabin. So
Wow.
we just kind of had this way of just having a dream and making it happen. And we moved in. We were in a little camper van 2 months before winter set in, and all the locals in this small town of Willard, Wisconsin, that this town only had one little grocery store, one bank, and 3 bars, to give you an idea.
Seems like a good ratio to me.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. But all the locals found out what was happening, and so these guys in pickup trucks came and helped us build this cabin, and we moved in the day
Oh
before
my
the
God.
first snowstorm with plastic covering the window open. So I mean, a lot of people look at it as crazy and a lot of adversity, but when you're 4, almost 5, it's really just an adventure.
Oh
And
yeah.
my brother and I would climb the mountain behind our house and name
Oh.
all the caves, and every cave had a
Oh,
wizard. And we grew up without a TV, so it was really a great breeding ground for imagination and creativity.
brilliant.
And I was writing stories from an early age. I learned to
Oh,
when I was 10, and I was typing stories out
oh my
about,
God.
my adventures. And so, yeah, when I was almost 16, we moved to Arizona. We wanted to escape the winters and have a more dry, warm climate. So we moved to Arizona, and I was also, pursuing dance. And so I studied dance for a while at the University of Arizona in Tucson.
Hmm.
And during that time, it was my brother who did 3 months of backpacking in New Zealand, and said,
Wow.
"Oh, it's the most magical place on earth, and we
Oh,
all need to move there." So we went and checked out New Zealand and really fell in love with it. So ended up staying there for 8 years, and my parents and my brother is still there. He married a New Zealander, and they have 3 kids there. So
oh,
it's like my home away from home. And in 2008, we were all coming back to the States for various reasons, and ended up in Asheville. I had, relatives in Charlotte, here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And my dad wanted to go to Asheville to explore some art studios and things like that. And I got involved with doing aerial dance in Asheville, climbing fabrics and trapeze and circus arts and stuff.
wow.
Um, so did a bit of that, and then my family ended up going back to New Zealand, and I met my husband here in Chapel Hill. And so one thing led to another, and we got married and had kids. And my kids are 7 and 8,
Great.
and so we're here in Chapel Hill, but we do manage to go back to New Zealand sort of every other year. I'm a real whiz with credit card points, so I work up all the credit cards, and we got to go on our last trip to New Zealand
Oh,
for
smart.
for only $400 because I used all my miles. So
Whoa.
um,
Okay.
yeah, so I have a little side skill with that.
One of the people who did one of my earlier podcasts, Rob Schaub, he spent years doing that, building up, and he went to many places like that. Wow, wow. So actually, your upbringing sounds idyllic to me.
Yes, it
I
was.
can I know right away you're a writer, you know, or I don't want to get too, but Orwell, one of my favorites, George Orwell, has got this great essay called "Why I Write,"
Mhm.
and he sort of lists all these reasons, and I've used it forever, like to diagnose people, because when you meet a, I know you coach and all that writing, and a lot of people they're very shy about it or whatever. Well, I'm not really a writer. Well, okay, well let's sit down. It's like saying, well, I'm not really diabetic. I just need insulin 5 times a day. And so one of the things about Orwell is this you can, he talks about childhood a little bit. Your childhood very lends itself. There's like a little bit of change, a little thing, a little bit of like self-awareness and self, I wouldn't say loneliness, but you're out there a little bit
Hmm.
and you're writing stories at 10. It's like trying to like, I think, make sense of it, probably.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think like somehow being out of the box and having adversity and struggles, we had this little cabin, and it would get really cold in the winter, so you'd go to bed with triple layers of
Go
clothes. And
tight to stay warm, right?
yeah, it just wasn't like, an easy life, but it was a magical one, and I think that
Yeah,
it really
beautiful.
made me feel alive, and through that, I got a lot of inspiration.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed that. It was like almost like your life is like a museum to me. Like when you walk in a museum or an art museum, you see this picture, that picture, that picture. Like I could stop at everything. Like you said, aerial dance. I was like, what the hell is that? What is aerial dance?
It's like Cirque du Soleil, you climb up the like fabric and wrap yourself in the
You would
fabric.
do that?
Yeah, I did that, and I actually taught it for years. I was teaching it all the way up through the pandemic, and then the pandemic shut down a lot of the studios in the area. But I was actually even doing it when I was like 8 months pregnant. I
How
was
the
like
heck
climbing up
did you get
fabric.
into aerial dance? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I was so I had a background in dance, and I was running. So in New Zealand, I ran a dance studio for 5 years, and also a nonprofit dance company called the Fern Dance Theater, and I would get grants and stuff like that to put on these shows in Wellington, New Zealand, in the capital. And it was one year we there was a festival by the waterfront, and they had a circus troupe that was there with this big outdoor rig and climbing up on this like fabric that was just like blowing in the wind. Wellington's very, very windy. And so she was just like up there dancing on the fabric, doing these drops and things like that. And I
Wow.
remember just I was so mesmerized, and I was like, I want to do that, which was basically just like dancing in the air. And so
Brilliant.
I went and did, they had a local studio, and so I went and did some classes there with them. And when I came back to the States, I ended up connecting with the Asheville Aerial Arts and did some performances with them. And then when I moved here, there was a studio that was just opening called the Flojo in
Uh-huh.
Carrboro. They've since shut down because of the pandemic. But at the time, I got connected with the owner. She was doing like hoop arts, like hula hooping and things like that.
Hmm.
But she's like, oh, there's these great beams. We could do aerials. So I basically helped start the aerial program, and I taught kids and teens and adults, did performances, um, and
Brilliant.
partner work, like two people on a trapeze doing
My
stuff.
God.
And through all that, at one point, I did go up to, there's the New England Center for Circus Arts up in Vermont, and I did do two different trainings, like a fabric teacher training and a
Uh-huh.
trapeze teacher training. So I went and got those trainings done to bring my skills back here to North Carolina.
Absolutely love here. This is why I like talking to people, creative people. It just reaffirms how great human beings are. And like, we get so myopic about life and all these things, but the fact that the Asheville Aerial Arts is a real work out there, that there's people out there, just makes me happy today that people are dancing on fabric. So just to confirm, when I wrap myself in a blanket watching the Buffalo Bills play. I'm not dancing, am I? That's because I'll
Well,
move on the couch, when they're I will move, but sometimes I'll even put two comforters around me because it's cold. But that's not the aerial arts, right? Where
no,
that's
I mean that could be like interpretive dance, I guess.
well, I am interpreting something. I'm interpreting that I'm old and lazy. Well, you're so interesting. This is so interesting. And I like people that do things. I like that you saw it. Such a great thing. I want to do that, but you do it. That's a lot of, you got to try things, crazy or not, or and find fulfillment. So
And I
beautiful.
think a lot of people, when they saw him, like when I got to the level of teaching and performing years later, people a lot of people were like, "Oh, you must have been naturally strong, or you must have been a gymnast when you were a kid." And I was like, "No, actually, I could never move beyond gymnastics level 1 because I couldn't do a backward somersault. My teacher
Mm.
kept me with the little kids even when I was 7 or 8 because I couldn't do a backward somersault, so I ended up quitting. And obviously, I was a dancer, but I didn't have a lot of upper body strength as a
Mm.
dancer. So when I started doing aerials, and quickly all these other people were climbing to the top, and it took me months. It was months and months and months. And I think some of my teachers were like, "Why are you doing this? Like, you're not
Kept
any good
falling.
at it." And I was like, "Oh, but I will be." And
Yeah,
I, 'cause
see, there you go.
I was like, eventually I'll develop muscles, right?
That
And
good lesson.
I finally did. And so then when I would teach my classes, and students, especially adults, kids are a bit more rolling with it and
Yeah,
just having fun, but adults would really beat themselves up if they saw other people in the
yeah,
class climbing and they couldn't do it.
yeah,
They would
yeah,
say, "Look, it took me months to be able to do this, and you're
yeah.
on class 3." you know
Yeah, and we're more brittle when we fall. Our hips
Yeah.
shatter. Like, little kids get such a good lesson. Such a good lesson. It'll come. You perseverance. So, before we get into some of the big question, um, we'll do our shared thing. I know Jill through Vine Leaves Press, our
Mhm.
shared publisher, led by the wonderful and dedicated Jessica Bell.
Mhm.
And so you've written a lot of articles and things like that and all that. But through Vine Leaves Press, you had your first novel, correct? And
Yes.
Shaken.
Shaken.
So
Yes.
tell us, and it came out in March this year,
Yes.
2025. So congratulations. And tell
Thank
us
you.
a little bit about that, quick, if you mind, if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's a young mother who has a baby who screams a lot, very colicky, and her husband, her partner's off working 2 jobs to make ends meet. And in her moment of sort of overwhelm and sleep deprivation, she ends up shaking the baby,
Mm,
and it panics and can't figure out what to do, and tries to sort of hide the incident. And then it ends up getting blamed on the babysitter to the point where almost the babysitter is going to,
mm,
is facing legal charges. And so the authorities get involved. And it's more of a psychological roller coaster than like a whodunit sort of mystery, because we do see on page 1 the mother loses control, so we know from the beginning she hurt her baby, and it's more of the roller coaster ride of what happens next, sort of raising the questions: what would you do if that happened to you, or your
mm,
neighbor, or your partner? Um, and so then it's 4 different point of views from the babysitter and the father of the child, and also the babysitter's mom. So we see these 4 point of views and how everybody is reacting to this incident, trying to figure out what
right.
happened and how to clear their name, because everybody starts
Yeah,
getting accused in it.
I love it. I love it. Great. Get it, people. Get it. Get it. Get it. Get it. How long did it take you to write it?
So, as you know, as I told you, I juggle so many things, and I'm
Yes.
kind of like all over with all of my interests. And so I often say, I'm a jack of all trades, a master of none. And, and that's kind of why it's taken me so long to get my novel out, even though I said at age 5 that I was going to publish books, and have been writing my whole life, but trying to take one idea and take it to the finish line without all of a sudden jumping to another idea.
Yeah.
So I initially wrote this first scene in 2007. So I was 27 at the time, 17 or 18 years ago, because I was it the story idea came to me when I was at a doctor's office, and I saw a
Hmm.
poster that said never shake a baby. And I remember thinking, well, who would shake a baby? I worked as a nanny at the time and was like, yeah, I mean, there's times you're frustrated and they're screaming, but who would shake a baby? And so I remember then looking at this poster thinking, well, clearly this must happen, otherwise there wouldn't be a campaign, there wouldn't
Sure.
be a poster.
Sure.
And I went home that afternoon and I wrote this opening scene of this young mother that snaps and loses control and does the
Hmm.
unthinkable. And
Hmm.
how do you recover from that? How do you ever feel okay with
Hmm.
yourself? after doing something horrific to your own child. And so I wrote that, and that first chapter has actually remained pretty much unchanged
Mm,
in the published version, which is amazing because I just wrote it right on a whim.
mm,
Um, and I wrote some more stuff on the book, but I kind of just meandered off, went on tangents, didn't really know what I was doing, and so it ended up getting, shoved aside while I worked on different things.
mm.
And I had a young adult book, a memoir, lots of things I was working on. And it was the summer of 2019 that my writers group, I was signed up to read something, and I didn't have anything new to
Mm.
read from what I was working on. So I dug through old files and I found this chapter
Oh, how
of
great.
Shaken. I brought it to the group, and I mean, the whole table sort of exploded with animated conversation about,
Wow.
postpartum depression, mental
Mhm.
health, motherhood, you name it. And the leader of the writer group leaned over and said, "Whatever else you're working on, stop all that
There
and
you
write this
go.
book."
There
And
you
so
go.
I started in 2019 of like a very kind of committed focus to it, and
Mm,
kind of put on blinders that was like, no matter what, I'm not going to get distracted. I'm going to finish this project no matter
right.
how hard it is. And of course, the pandemic came, which, was a blessing and a curse because I had more
Mm,
time to
right.
write at home, which helped me push it forward and less distractions. Um, and I think by the fall of 2021,
Mm,
I was querying agents. So I think once
wow.
I really committed to it, it was like about 2 years to get it
Wow,
to
that's
get it.
not, that's pretty good. Plus, you were writing most of it, up in the air and aerial while holding on to fabric. That's hard to type up there.
Well,
No,
and I had two kids too, which were at
yeah,
the time when I was.
they're hard to. Well, congratulations, congratulations.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
going to read it, and I recommend everyone read this book and support Vine Leaves and great writers like Jill. So I could talk to you about writing forever, but maybe I'll bring you back for just that kind of a talk because we have to give the audience what they're here for. But first, before we move on to my big question, I ask everyone a mystery question. It's the same one. It's the same one. It's silly. But now, given your life and where you've been and all that, you might be the one. I ask everyone, have they ever seen Bigfoot? Because I always say, if you saw Bigfoot, we stop everything, and because that would be the most famous person. But have you, in your log cabin world of that, have you ever seen Bigfoot?
Nope, never seen
Okay. All right. Because
Bigfoot.
I don't think he exists, but I'm gonna find out because I am obsessed with Bigfoot. Okay, no Bigfoot. He didn't come over and help build the log cabin or anything like that.
I mean, maybe when I was asleep, maybe that's how it got done so quickly.
The rumor is that Bigfoot is an aerial artist as well. He does it with redwood trees. He kind of. All right.
Oh, that'd
Okay.
be so cool.
All right. Well, now we can move on. Okay. So you're pretty fun. You're fascinating. I like everyone I interview. They have such good humor. So nice. All right, Jill. Share with the group your story of the most famous person you barely met, or who you want to talk about today. What do you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I haven't met that many famous people, but I will talk about a story for the writing world. And
Okay.
I did meet Jason Mott, who was the winner of the National Book Award
Nice.
a couple of years back. So I was like, that makes him pretty famous.
I
Um,
think so.
Yeah, and he's a North Carolina writer, and I met him at the one of the North Carolina writer conferences. And he's very charismatic. He was the keynote speaker. He was up on stage telling us all about writing, but he's also very humble and very real to life,
Mm.
and and tall and handsome and just a charming
That
guy all
helps.
around. And so we were all my author friends were all kind of swooning a bit, like, oh my God, this is not. So we did work up the courage to get a picture of him afterwards, and I was able to be right next to him,
Oh.
and I got right in there. But it was really funny because when my husband saw the picture, he's like, "You really got a death grip on him."
They had to
And
pry you off later.
yeah,
Like,
I think I
oh.
was like really right in there. My husband was like, "You didn't really hold back." He's like, "So who's this
The
guy?"
husband noticed, right?
My husband noticed. But we didn't really talk or anything. I think I was kind of like, I'm a
Oh,
writer
I
too.
love that.
So, I mean, maybe one day he'll check out my book and, you
That
know.
one day he's going to be holding you. Like, let go of me, Jason Mott. Um,
Yeah.
no, I love that. Listen, this is what this show is all about. Because I've had other people say, well, I spent a month and a half with Charlton Heston and all that. I'm like, I don't want that. I want
Hmm.
this little kind of thing because there's something magical about it. We kind of like it's historical in some ways. And I
Hmm.
don't know. So at that point, when you met him, had you published your book yet?
No, no, but I did. I think I had made. I think I'd already had my contract with Fine Leaves Press,
Okay,
so
so you were moving that
I
way.
knew it was coming. And when I look back now at these conferences, I do wish I could have nudged myself a little more to talk and make connections more with these authors, because
Yeah,
when all of a sudden when it came time to get my endorsements, like
yeah,
how great if I'd gotten an endorsement from Jason Mott,
yeah.
but to write him, it would be like I was that squeaky girl squeezing you really hard doing a hug,
I was the one
know.
who left imprints on your bicep. Um,
Yeah. And I don't know, I might have, like, because a lot of times you have to email through the agent,
yeah,
and so it's hard to make that personal connection.
yeah,
Um,
it
when
is.
you're
I
just
mean,
one of many that are at a conference or,
yeah, so people maybe not in the writing world per se or publish when you publish a book or when it gets you want endorsements you want on the cover or on the back as high low put and so little blurbs and all that so you learn that so it's like you publishing is just like the first part right. Yeah, I mean the whole thing is like getting it out there and marketing and if you get advocates like that but and it's also feels like you were gaining your confidence a little bit, your footing.
yes.
There's something wonderful. So I think it's really good that you brought this meeting up because I think it's a seminal point of you. You're evolving, and
Yes.
you'll always remember that. And I love your husband's reaction. Tell him he's a good man. Keep your eye on the other writers. Keep good man. I like him.
Yeah. And I feel like if I ever got to that point where people were reaching out to me to write an endorsement for their book, oh my gosh, I would just be
Yeah.
so flattered. I'd be so over the moon. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I made it to the other side.
I solicit it when I hear people are publishing. Do you want me to endorse it? You want me to endorse it?
Yeah.
I'll do anything to get my name out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good point. People often because I teach college kids and all that, and I say you're in a great position right now because you can ask anyone for help and they would want to help you. You can ask CEOs for, what I mean? And I said, ratioatic, like if an elementary school kid said, how did you get in college? Will you give me some advice? Of course, we love to give advice. We love to give
Mhm.
help. And the fact that you want to do that shows your good spirit for this.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love helping other writers. I lead several different writers groups. I've done, led critique sessions. I actually teach my son is homeschooled, and so I teach a creative writing class for homeschoolers. And
Oh,
just
okay.
this last week they were sharing their work to the class, which is a big step for a kid. Um
Huge.
to be that vulnerable. But I was making a point in teaching the class of how to be really supportive. And it's like, even if you don't like something, there's always a way that you can phrase it to make the author still feel really good about themselves and their work,
Yeah,
and sort of building them up. And that's always my focus of how can I help somebody take it further and feel really good about what they're doing,
that's
um,
nice.
as opposed to taking a red pen and
Yeah,
X and
exactly. Yeah, you're it's constructive criticism, but it's not. It's more progress. It's positive kind of
yes.
reinforcement. That's how I go after things too. Yeah, it's so good. I think it's your upbringing, young lady. You were all over the place. You know what I mean? You met all these nice people building things for you. And Willard, I'll always remember Willard, Wisconsin, with three bars, one bank, and what's the other thing they had?
It was like a grocery store and a feed mill, so you could go and get,
Please,
animal feed for your farm animals.
please one day write a book called Willard. Will you do that for
I
me?
don't really think it's changed much over the years.
Thank God.
I
Thank
feel like
God.
it's nobody really knows
They
about
got
it.
rid of the bank. We got a fourth bar now in Willard. I want this episode's gonna be big in Willard. Willard and in New Zealand. Well, so what's on the horizon for you? What are you doing? What's
Well,
going
right now I've written a young adult novel that's a mystery, and it's more of a typical mystery of kind of whodunit sort of thing. Several different kind of crimes all within one, so you're trying to figure out if it's one person who did it or multiple people who did it.
on?
Basically, the overall premise is this teen girl loses her parents in a car accident, which is very tragic, but she notices all these clues and mysterious things happening that night, and later other clues that make her think that it wasn't an accident, but her parents were actually murdered. And so then she goes on this mission to try to gather more clues. Well, of course, the authorities, in young adult books, the teens always know more than the authorities,
They
and the
sure
authorities
do.
are just like, "Oh, you're stupid, go back to school."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's pulling all these clues, but the more things she uncovers, the more she realizes her own life is in danger. So
Oh,
that's the premise. It's I've had a group of beta readers read it and review it, and give really great feedback. But there are some plot holes and some inconsistencies and some things, timeline things that I need to
yeah.
fix. And so I'm sort of in the deep revision stage where you're moving things, and I have pages and pages
That's a
of
tough
notes.
stage. Trust me. That's a tough
Yes,
stage.
and I get to points where I all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, because I can't remember all the details and
Yeah.
keeping everything straight. So it's still got a bit of work, but I'm
Right.
hoping that maybe if I'm super productive, I can get it to my agent sometime this summer.
Well,
Is
that's good. Yeah.
hopeful thinking. But
Well,
I do have two kids and life's chaotic, so
and you're up high in the air on fabric. You know what I mean? It takes a little while to.
to come down and ground
The,
yourself.
the problem when you write one book and then you get another, you know what's good and you know what works, and so it's like, you know what I mean. It takes a little long. It's a little easier and it's a little harder. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit of both. Because the more you know, the more you got to do. So, but you'll find it in, you know, there's a old coach, Bill Parcells used to coach football and all that, and he used to say, "You are what your record is."
Hmm.
I like that because a lot of teams they would be like, let's say they were 500 teams, 7-7, but if we won this game, if we were, he's like, nah, you're a 500 team, so your record is accomplishment. Your
Hmm.
record is you do it, you don't give up. So I've no doubt that this will be the next published book and the next, because that's just your MO. You get things done. So look forward to that one.
Yeah, and I feel like I follow kind of my own trajectory because I know that
Yeah.
most writers who've just done, I've, Shaken as a domestic psychological thriller. And I do have ideas for another domestic psychological thriller. And I think if I was being really strategic, I should do that because then I would have the readers of Shaken
Yeah.
that would be ready to read that. And I am toying with that idea. But
Yeah.
I also feel like I've written this young adult novel,
Go with
and
that first. That
and
you
I
heard it here, kids. I'm telling Jill, go with that one first, then go to the next. Knock them down like bowling pins, okay?
yeah, and I feel like I'll jump all over then, I guess.
And
Build my
throw
young adult audience and my adult audience.
throw should out the window. It's I want. I want. I always say should is the worst word on the face of the earth. All right, last question. This is really fun. This is really fun. Last question. If you saw Jason Mott again, what would you say?
Well, hopefully I'd have like one of my little promo cards for my book, and I would say, "Oh, I love your writing. I'm a big fan. I've met you at the conference before. Would you consider reading my book?"
Would you
Um,
grab him? Would you grab him again?
well, that was a moment we were like posing for a picture.
Two
But
hands this time.
yeah,
Two hands. Two
I
hands.
like got nosedive right in for a big hug and be
Yeah.
like, this person.
I'm just teasing. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed talking to you, and you're fun and you're productive and you're positive. And I wish you great luck. I know you're going to do very well with your next books and all that, and your children and your husband, and stay up in the air. You hear me? Stay up if you can. And folks out there, I recommend you look up Jill and buy her book, Shaken, and keep following her. She's a mover and a shaker. And if you like this podcast, like it and subscribe so more good people like Jill you get to learn about. So thank you so much. And we will see you up in the air, okay?
Thank you. This was so much fun.
Okay, bye bye.